Yes.
Hi everyone, this is DeDe.
And I am Fred. And this is our 36-foot floating home sunshine.
Join us as we go sailing.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Here we are in Phuket. And last video left as we were on the way to Pancor. That went pretty well. We got up there just a little bit after sunset. And since I didn't want to try to get into the marina in the dark because it has a narrow channel for depth, we anchored out in about 15 feet of water. Plenty of space to anchor there, and it's pretty safe. Anyway, got up in the morning, putted into the marina, and unknown to me at the time, this was going to be the beginning of almost a nightmare of problems. Anyway, I only planned to stay there for a short period of time. DeDe had about 2 weeks left on her Malaysian visa. So I decided to check out the day before her visa expired. And as I'm working on the boat, doing numerous little chores, the troubles come in three started. I was down, had my little hookah setup running with my compressor and my generator, which was only 9 months old. Pretty good Briggs & Stratton, easy to start, ran well, probably had less than 50 hours on it. I was down cleaning the prop, and all of a sudden I'm not getting air anymore. So I come up to the surface, climb up, and I'm not sure it was a chicken or the egg situation. I'm not sure which came first. Either the compressor motor burned up and caused the control unit on the generator to burn up, or I suspect the control unit on the generator burned up and fried the compressor motor. In either case, both units are now non-functional. So I'm scrabbling around, found a new compressor at a fairly reasonable price. But small generators, I was looking for like a little Honda 2.2, seemed to be relatively unavailable anywhere. And so I figured, well, just have to go somewhere else. Go to check out. Now, they had been giving us a hard time. I never actually formally checked in all the way because of this insurance requirement. And turns out the Malaysian authorities wanted us to spend a substantial amount of money to buy insurance that would no longer be valid once we left Malaysia. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I spend all this money for an insurance policy that as soon as I leave Pancor is no longer valid? Because I'll be leaving Malaysia. And they steadfastly refused to give us exit clearance. Well, the long and short of it was we had to make an emergency run. It was 2.5 hour taxi ride up to somewhere north in Malaysia to an official immigration office to get DeDe a 30-day extension on her visa. And we did this on the last possible day of her visa. Well, that all went pretty smoothly. Cost about, between the taxi ride and the cost of the visa extension, was about $100 US. So we came back, and now starts the big joke. How do we get this insurance? Well, I'm contacting insurance agents all over the place. The folks in the marina office, we were in Pancor Island Marina, were very, very helpful, and we're grateful for that. But I got prices anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 for an insurance policy that would be void effectively as soon as we left Malaysia. And I was contacting companies all over the place. A lot of places would not insure a U.S. flagged vessel. In other words, my boat is a U.S. Coast Guard documented vessel, and they wouldn't touch it. So we're on our emergency visa, we're sitting there spending another month's rent in the marina and attendant expenses of doing that, and frantically looking for some solution. I must say that James, the marina manager, did a tremendous amount to help us with this situation, but with no resolution. Eventually stumbled upon, quite by accident, another insurance agent in the U.S. who would write the policy as required specifically by Malaysia. It has to have certain wording in it as part of the policy provisions. Well, the company that wrote the policy was very experienced in this, knew exactly what to do, put the whole thing all together, and by that time we're once again approaching a deadline for a visa. Now, I still had a month left, but Nadine was down to the last few days, and we finally got everything straightened out and left. So that's why I kind of call this escape from Malaysia. I mean, being held essentially hostage for a month and then being extorted for $1,000 to get this insurance policy to leave the country. I thought it was all a bit outrageous. I understand why they did it, because with the COVID thing, a lot of boats were unattended. People left the country, couldn't get back, and their boats were unattended. A number of boats sank, both at anchor and moorings and in marinas, and the government of Malaysia was stuck with the bill of salvage operations or clearing the wrecks or whatever you want to call it. But it wasn't totally the fault of the owners of the boat, because with the COVID thing, they left and either couldn't get back because of travel restrictions, or the airlines had doubled and sometimes tripled the airline rates and made it quite difficult for people to return who had left. Anyway, unfortunately, small boaters, not at all rich guys like me, were really stressing over this, and it's still going on. I mean, this provision that the Malaysian government, it's an old law, they've instituted it. I think it was primarily geared towards commercial shipping, but they kind of threw an umbrella over it to include private yachts that were cruising through the country. Anyway, we finally got out of there, once again, almost on the deadline for DeDe's visa expiration. And then the real fun started. There was a very light breeze from the south or southwest, which was barely enough to push us along, so I was using the motor to assist, of course. And all of a sudden the high temperature alarm went off, and there was this horrible screeching from the motor. So shut the motor down, go down and look, and the freshwater circulating pump on the motor, the bearing had seized. Well, I knew it was getting close to time to put the new pump on. I was hoping I could get to Thailand before I had to do this. And I had the new pump already. I bought it early last year from either eBay or Lazada. I can't remember now which. I think it was from eBay, and it might have been even a year before that. I've been slowly stockpiling spare parts for the motor and various other things on the boat. Anyway, let everything cool down, took the pressure cap off the cooling system so the system wouldn't be pressurized, started the motor, and it ran fine again. And then without overheating, because without any pressure on the system, it wasn't blowing by the seal on the shaft of the pump, the water. Anyway, we hear this, all of a sudden hear this loud bang and a clank, and it seemed like the motor was no longer pushing the boat forward. So I shut the motor down and hem and haw, and what the heck has gone wrong? Because the transmission I replaced some time ago and never had any problems with it. It was a brand new ZF gear. So I'm sitting in the cockpit contemplating my navel, and we're kind of wallowing along under reduced sail because there's not much wind. And I know, it's strange, reduced sail, but I didn't want to have the sails up there slatting around, especially the mainsail. I think we only had a double reefed main up in the Yankee or something like that. So I'm imagining the worst. I can't figure out what's wrong. The old transmission, the clutch in the transmission for forward was worn out. And that's why I got a new transmission, because I had heard rebuilding those transmissions was at best a 6-month delay of a similar failure. Anyway, with the noise everything made, I was very concerned, so I finally put on the snorkel and the fins and dove overboard to make sure I still had a propeller. And everything below the water was fine. The prop, the shaft, the strut, no problem. It turned easily by hand. So then climbed back aboard and contemplated what the heck was going on. If I put the transmission in gear, I couldn't turn the shaft by hand, which was not absolute proof, but it means at least that the clutch in the transmission, or the clutches in the transmission, were working well enough that I couldn't overpower the clutch by hand. So I sat there and thought about it and thought about it and thought about it, and then finally I kind of had a bit of an epiphany. It turns out that the shift lever on the steering binnacle, or the wheel and the compasses, when I push the shift lever up and down, the travel of the cable is greater than the amount of travel necessary on the shift lever on the transmission itself. And I think what happened was, when I put it in forward, it actually pushes the shift lever on the transmission further than it needs to be pushed to engage. In fact, I think it pushed it so far that it was almost disengaged again. But I don't know that for sure, in the sense that I couldn't see exactly what was going on. When we had the loud clang, the bang, and everything stopped working in going forward, now the transmission worked in reverse fine. Anyway, I kind of thought that, well, maybe what I need to do is just not push the lever so far on the binnacle, so it doesn't push the lever on the transmission as far. and started up the motor and put it in gear gently without pushing the lever too far. Everything worked fine. So essentially we sat there and flopped around for about a day, not getting anywhere. And so I'm going along, and all of a sudden the overheat goes off again. So shut the motor down and go and look, and what had happened was the hose clamp that holds the discharge hose from the raw water pump had broken, and the pressure of the water blew the hose off the raw water pump. Well, that's an easy fix. Just put a new hose clamp. Put the hose back on, put a new hose clamp, which I have plenty of spares for. But I noticed when I was down there, there was an impeller blade laying in the engine room. And I went, oops. So, fortunately, I got spare impellers. I take it apart, put the new impeller in, get everything running again, and start the motor, putting along, and got a problem with the water pump, the freshwater circulating pump again, which is understandable. So then we got to shut everything down, let it cool off, and the water pump is, of course, on the front of the motor. It's a center cockpit motor, center cockpit boat, so the motor is under the cockpit and has a bulkhead fairly close to the front of the motor, which makes changing the water pump a bit of a chore. So spent a couple hours, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, taking everything apart, putting it all back together again. And off we go. So now we've got a new impeller and the raw water pump, a new freshwater circulating pump, and whatever the situation with the transmission was seems to have resolved itself. Anyway, we were heading off to Phuket, and all of this going on in the first couple of days, I don't think we made about 80 miles from Pancor, because the starting and stopping and the wind going light, or not going light, it was light, until we got about halfway up towards Phuket, and the wind came in pretty nicely from the east-northeast, and we were able to sail, and actually had pretty strong wind, pretty good sized waves there for a while. Got up into Phuket late in the afternoon, dropped the hook, and stayed there. Did we stay there for the night? I think we stayed there for the night. And put the dinghy together and went ashore the next morning. And then our adventures in Phuket started. Anyway, that's it as kind of an introduction to this last Malaysia video.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This morning, wavy, windy, so noisy. Oh. Come, wave, big one, oh. Ooh. Ah. Ooh. Oh. Guys, good morning. Today is about noon na day, no? So we're going to shore to look for money place, because no money, honey. So we're distance from marina. The boat is over there, sit over there. Then we are far distance from marina over there. So a lot of tourist boats here. Yeah, that's where we're going, over there. We came here last night. We arrived. And we will see if we can get SIM card. here in Thailand. So that's for now. Updates of our trip. This is Thailand. 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 So nice here. That's the view. Here in Marina. So we're looking for SIM card. View from here. We are upstairs of the marina. We leave the dinghy over there. This is the whole location, the area. So nice. Mini boats. And the big building. We're going there. Free ride. Free ride.